Okay, everybody, here is the sit down, as Michael Franzese likes to call it. It's a over an hour conversation between Michael and I. We go back all the way to the mid 80s at Terminal Island. He was indicted on some racketeering stuff. He allegedly was making $10 million a week, according to the government. He was captain in the Colombo crime family, which I guess would qualify him or classify him as a street boss. Sometimes myself, like Michael, there's a lot of controversy about us exiting our former lifestyle, but I want to tell you that I never heard a bad thing from any made guys while I was incarcerated, any of the three times I've gone down. Michael's a stand-up guy. I like him, and this is kind of a redo. Just for the record, because I get stuff from people, they tell me this and they tell me that. Michael walked the yard every day. We were in there with Rosario Gambino, Sal Gambino from the Cherry Hill Gambinos. In addition, Sam Sarantino, the LA underboss, was in there. So people putting smut on him, I don't know about it. No one's ever confronted me about it. So just sit back. This is, like I said, a little redo of what Michael and I already did. He had posted it on his channel, but we kind of redid it. And here it is. I hope you enjoy it. A lot more stuff coming. And thanks to Michael Franzese, who I consider a close personal friend.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. And as always, I give God all the praise, honor, and glory, and thanksgiving for that. Always will. Today I have a very special guest. His name is George Christie. George and I go back about 30 some odd years. We first met in Terminal Island, California, when I was in prison. And in Terminal Island, there's two yards. There's the North Yard and the South Yard. The North Yard was really, at that time, they didn't really have a federal jail out here. So a lot of people that were pre-trial would stay in the North Yard. They'd pick them up every morning, take them to, their court case or whatever. And then you had the South Yard, which was mostly for the residents. I was in the South Yard. Everybody starts out in the North Yard, but then hopefully you move your way back to the South Yard, which was much better. I was in the South, George was in the North, but you're allowed to, intermingle. You go, to both places easily. No separation there. And we met and enjoyed the guy very much, very respectful guy. He was respected in there. And he was at one time the head of the Hells Angels chapter out here in California. George lives out here now. He spent some time in Spain, but he's back out here in California now. And I had a great sit down with him. He's a great guy. Met with him and his wife, and we just went over things. And we had a real good time, and I think you'd enjoy the conversation. A couple of months back, I think I did a video about the Hells Angels and about the similarities between their group, their organization, and Cosa Nostra, my former organization. And I think you're going to enjoy that. George and I talked about that, very conversational. As a matter of fact, he asked me some questions, and so we went back and forth. I think you're going to enjoy it. George is, just a great person. He's pretty well known out here in these circles. He's now not a member of the Hells Angels anymore. He left that life as I left mine behind. And so we had a very interesting conversation. So with no further hesitation, here's my guest, George Christie. So George, it's been, I would say about 35 years before we last have seen each other under a little different circumstances, I would say.
Much different circumstances. I was down there at Terminal Island. You were there as well at that particular point in our lives. 1986, I was indicted and I came down there. And it was interesting. It was a whole new world for me. I'd never been arrested before.
Really?
So I went big the first time. Conspiracy to commit murder, murder for hire.
And you were acquitted in that case.
I was acquitted in that case. We took it all the way. In 2011, I was indicted again. But just the circumstances and the way things were going, I didn't want to. I felt I could beat the case, but I dealt it out just because the dynamics had changed. my reputation was a lot more well known then. And I had just, I don't know if you recall, I'd carried the torch in the Olympics.
I do. That was in 84, right?
1984. Yeah, the ATF had made allegations we were going to support terrorists with weapons or whatnot. I never really got the whole story. And, you know, our position was to support the Olympics. And if the ATF hadn't have started that rumor, we never would have even got involved. We had no interest in the Olympics. But, you know, I, along with another member, felt we needed to make a statement. So that's how I wound up in Terminal Island.
And the government was upset with you after you did that.
They were very upset, as they were upset with you.
Okay. Well, I have to say, I had been arrested probably 17 times prior to that stint in Terminal Island. But I understand, you know, George, I was on trial 5 times, and I beat them 5 times.
Right.
But the 6th time I said, my luck's going to run out. You
Absolutely.
know, even though they bring these crazy cases that they bring, but you got to spend millions of dollars, you got to spend all that time in fighting, and if you lose,
You're done.
You're done.
In this 2011, it finally was ready to go to trial in 2013, I believe, or 2014. My daughter was one of the lawyers representing me. My daughter had gone to law school and been working to protect me and other Hells Angels. But they didn't like the way things were going. I wouldn't work with them. So they came with a superseding indictment. And in the superseding indictment, there were 3 mandatory minimums of life. And, you know.
You don't want to roll the dice.
No, you can't roll the dice. You know, they said, well, off 0 to 5, will you take a deal? And I did, and my daughter negotiated. I wound up going to Texas for a year.
Well, you know, a lot of people don't understand that. You know, you take a plea, you're automatically guilty. It's not always the case, but you got to cut your losses sometimes because, you know, look, I say this, government doesn't always play fair. They got all the tools in their toolbox, and, you know, to beat a federal case, extremely difficult.
It is, and they've got all the money.
They got all the money and all the time.
Yeah, and, you know, people go into the trial and you don't know what the jury's thinking.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
And you get people in there. One of the things we asked was Sons of Anarchy was very popular at the time.
One of my daughter's favorite shows.
Sure, yeah, and you know,
as a matter of fact, she named my grandson Jax.
Well, there you go. Yes. Now that shows you how popular.
Yeah, and I said to her, "Wait a second, what's the tradition? You know, your father, you're supposed to name him Michael." No, Dad, Jax. That's it. She loved that show. Yeah, she loved it.
Well, you know, one of the questions was, do you watch Sons of Anarchy? I came up with this voir dire questions, and the Judge Wu thought they were brilliant, you know, and he was asking all the jurors himself, you know.
Really?
Do you watch Sons of Anarchy? And if they answered yes, the next question was, do you believe the leader knows everything that everyone's doing? Because the allegation was I had ordered these guys to firebomb some tattoo shops, and on the contrary, I had told them stay away from the tattoo shops.
Right.
And I had one in mind that I was pretty sure the feds had installed cameras in there.
Really?
And I did go in there one day, and the day I went in there, the camera just didn't happen to be working.
That's a break.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know. I think things are different now. I think people understand that sometimes law enforcement will go to great lengths to get people, and they'll break the law to enforce the law.
There's no question that they know that now, George. With all the stuff that's been going on, they don't play fair. We know that, and you know what bothers me is, you know, just don't weaponize the Department of Justice to go after people that you don't like.
Correct.
And that's what's happening a lot today. But that's a whole other issue.
It is another issue. It's not only a judicial issue; it's a political issue. And, you know, I want to ask you, I've been wanting to ask you this for years. Now, when you disappeared out of Terminal Island, the urban legend in the prison was you were going, you said, I'm going to give you guys some money back.
Yeah.
And that never happened, right?
No, it didn't. And as a result, I wound up back in prison.
I know that.
No, but look, you know, I was playing a game with them. I was trying to manipulate them, and it caught up to me. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was okay. But, Yeah, look, George, they claim that I have money buried everywhere, even
I
till
know
now.
that. I know that
Even till
feeling.
now. I mean, they still bother me over it, believe it or not, and they won't believe it. I said, hey, it's been 25 years. Don't you think if the money was there, I would have made a run for it already? You know, oh, Franzese, you're smart, and we know that at some point in time, you know, maybe it'll be for your kids. I hear all of that.
Do you think that they're consciously like watching you all the time, or do you think they go? It seems to me they go through spurts. Somebody may,
absolutely.
an informant may say, "Hey, you know, Christie's up to this again. I heard he's back in the game."
Absolutely, you nailed it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and it goes in spurts like that. You know, they're on you, and then people leave and they retire from the office. You don't hear anything. Then all of a sudden, boom, somebody says something, and it starts all over again. But, you know, I mean, I can't complain. Nobody's really bothered me, and you know,
And I'm with you. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I have friends in law enforcement now.
I do as well.
Why not keep those relationships, and that's it. But
Right.
yeah, let me ask you. You were in TI for a year. Were you on the north or the south yard?
Well, I was on the south yard. Isn't that where they bring you in? The north yard was like the penthouse.
No, it was reverse.
The reverse. Okay. Because I had a member there whose name was Guy. He was a San Diego Hell's Angel. He was a leader. And, you know, this is also how things have changed. Now, he was there. He had pled guilty to machine gunning two rivals in another motorcycle club, and they both died. Barry Tarlow got him 4 years.
Barry, yeah, he was great.
Remember Barry?
He
was
your
my lawyer.
Right? Yeah. He's the one that beat
that case.
the murder rap.
Yeah, he beat that case.
Good lawyer, yeah.
He, you know, they had these devastating tapes of me, and everybody that listened to the tapes, oh my God, you're done. You know, Barry Tarlow listens to them and goes, "Oh, I think I could beat this case."
Wow.
And I'm like, "You do?" Of course, you know, we talked about, you know, how much it cost you. So, you know, you figure in 1986, you know, it cost over $500,000.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and to fight this case. And
absolutely.
if you don't have that money, you can't go up against the big boys.
No.
You've got to have that money.
No, and my case has cost me millions of dollars, and you know, when I think back, all the time and the effort. I mean, Cammie, my wife, she wasn't my wife back then. We had just gotten together. I'm on trial for several months. You know, Rudy Giuliani put me on trial in that big racketeering case. I beat it, but at what cost? I mean, you know.
Do you find it ironic now? Giuliani's kind of on the you know, the 180 of the spectrum.
I can't believe it, honestly. It's, you know,
some of the things he does, it just makes me wonder, is he...
you know, my only feeling with that is, and we...
Do you have animosity towards him?
I don't, you know. Actually, I was on a radio show with him about a year ago.
Okay.
A good friend of mine says, "Mike, I want to put you on the radio." And I said, "Yeah, let's go on." He says, one little caveat, Rudy's going to be on the other side of this with it. He said, "Do you mind?" I said, "Hell no, I want to talk to him."
And
I spent 30 years. It was great. You know what he said, George? And I have to say, he said, I'll tell you how far it went. He said, "I've been watching you for 30 years. I tried to put you away for life," which is true. Told me he was going to give me 100 years at the day of my arraignment.
Right.
And he said, "But I think your redemption is genuine. I've been watching you." He said, "So I want to compliment you on it." I said, "Okay." So we got off to a good start. We finished that. Everything's great. And then I write this book, Mafia, Democracy, and my publisher says, "Hey, you think Rudy will write the foreword?" I said, "You know what, now you're pushing it a little bit." But I said, "Hey, I'm not shy, I'll ask him." I asked him, and he writes this here, tremendous foreword. See?
Wow.
Written by Rudy Giuliani.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Well, you know...
he does a great job on it. So, you know what it is for me? I am, George, what's going on today, anybody that's involved with Trump, they demonize this. So I can't believe half the stuff they're saying. And I think a lot of stuff's going to come out about this guy, Biden. And again, without getting into politics, George, I got to tell you this. I had, you know, we'll get into this a little bit, see your opinion. I don't know where you are politically, but that's okay. If
I
he
might
gets mad at me,
surprise you.
people, it's all right. But listen, this Biden thing, he's being accused of having shell companies with approximately $20 million going into bank accounts owned by his family, right?
Right.
Fact. Suspicious bank records. He had 20 of these shell companies. I had 18 of them in the gas business. 18 shell companies. We didn't have a service. We didn't have a product. We did nothing. All it was collect illegal tax money that I was defrauding the government out of.
Right. You weren't paying them.
No, I wasn't paying. We were collecting the tax and defrauding them, not paying them. We figured out a scheme. 8 years I ran it, right? This is the exact same thing. There's more evidence against them with emails and text messages and everything else. All I had was a witness against me. They've got everything. It's an absolute racketeering indictment. I'm not going to say he's guilty yet because everybody deserves their day in court. But the evidence is, it's an indictment without a doubt. I'm very familiar. I had 3 RICO cases, so I understand how they work. But so what I'm saying is, obviously they don't want to indict the president. I don't think that's a good precedent anyway. But anybody involved with Trump, what they're doing to this guy and to everything, so that's why I don't trust anything at all.
Well, you know, I'm not a big Trump fan, but I will tell you this. This last thing the judge found him guilty of, and they fined him $368 million. You know, the thing that I find disgusting is that the banks got all their money back. He paid all the loans off. And, you know, how many people inflate their property or their wealth?
Everybody.
Every day, somebody looking for a loan is going to inflate.
Business.
Absolutely. And there was no crime.
There was no crime.
He paid them back.
Paid them back, no victimless crime, and the bank said they work with him again.
Absolutely, I know that.
So how do you do this to somebody? It's insanity.
So, you know, I have to say, in all fairness, I mean, he is getting pushed around.
You know what? And it doesn't even matter that it's Trump. It's anybody that they could do this to. It's just dangerous. And you and I, having a background, knowing how far that they can go, to let them go to this extent now is it's so dangerous.
No, I know. I had a 59 count state racketeering case in 2001, 2002, and you know, they just threw everything against the wall, thinking ultimately something would stick. And my ex-wife at the time was indicted. My oldest son was indicted. You know, in an effort to get me to make some sort of plea. And are you familiar with Tony Serra? He's a Bay Area lawyer. He did a lot of stuff in the 60s and 70s.
Know the name, yes.
He came in and was fighting the criminal case, and Barry Tarlow was fighting the bail. I mean, they wouldn't let me bail, and that was the wedge. We'll put the wedge on him. He's got to stay in jail. He can't fight this on the street.
The same.
Yeah, same kind of deal. And Tarlow got me bail, and as soon as I got bail, they asked me, "Will you take time served?"
Wow.
So, you know, what do you do? And, you know, people jumped on me about that in my own organization at that time. They go, "You made a deal." And, well, you know, you're looking at
what's wrong with that?
100 years, you know. If they offer you time served, you take the deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's logic. But, you know.
George, this last case that I took a plea on, I had been to trial 5 times. I never, ever was even 5 minutes late to court. Never. Faced a jury where I was going to get 100 years if I got convicted on the Giuliani case. Faced tons of time, never missed a court date, never was even 5 minutes late. Anytime I got arrested, I showed up. So now this case, because I beat them so many times, they hold me without bail. Now this was a fraud case. There was no violence in the case at all, right? Defrauding the government. So, you know, the 2 reasons, the 2 conditions they can hold you without bail is, number 1, you're a danger to the community. They couldn't prove that in the basis of my indictment. And number 2, you're a flight risk. Well, they could never say I was a flight risk. I always show up. They couldn't say I was a danger to the community. So you know what? They created a new statute. They said he's an economic danger to the community.
I've never heard that one.
Never heard it, and you never heard it again.
No, I've never heard
just that one time.
And I follow all this legal stuff. You know, I constantly listening to legal podcasts. My daughter's a criminal lawyer, constantly talking to her about things and if we should have did this and should we have done that. You know, second guessing myself even years later. But it's
they do what they want.
Yeah, they do what they want.
It's terrible.
What's the conviction rate? 98?
96, 97%.
Yeah, I mean, it's outrageous.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so George, you have a very colorful background, to say the least. But I'm interested in something, and I want to get into a discussion about it. About a year and a half ago, somebody wrote an article about the Hells Angels. I thought it was very interesting. And in comparison to my former life, because I don't like to use the word mafia, Cosa Nostra is what we call it here. And as I was reading what the rules or the policies are for Hells Angels, I was comparing it to, what we went through in my former life. So I want to, if you're okay with that, because
I'm okay with
that was
anything.
just an article. I want to hear it from you.
Well,
And I want to say this.
question number one, what do you want to know?
Okay, here's the thing. When I got involved in the life and I took an oath, Halloween night, 1975, it was a blood oath where I surrendered my life to Cosa Nostra.
Sure.
Told, this life comes before anything. If your mother is sick and dying, you're at her bedside, we call you to service, you leave your mother, you come and serve us. We're number one before anything and everything. And idealistically, that's what I felt about the life. I mean, it was important to me. I had a very idealistic view. I was going to be part of something my dad was part of. It really meant a lot to me. How did you have that same feeling, that same brotherhood, that same feeling with the Hells Angels?
Absolutely. And I've talked about it recently. I've talked about it in the past. Old Man John.
And you were the head of the chapter, weren't you?
Well,
You were the boss.
I was a young guy in Los Angeles. There was a leader down there called Old Man John. He was one of the old timers. He was a boss. Had a lot of influence in Southern California, and he took a liking to me. And the night I got inducted into the club, standing outside, and by the fire, it was warm. I mean, cold. I was trying to warm up.
Do me a favor. Tell us about the induction ceremony.
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you. Old Man John opened the door, and he yelled. He had a real gruff voice. He said, "Christy, get your ass in there!" And all the prospects, we all looked at each other, and I knew. I go, this is it. And I ran to the front door. I went in, and inside the room is the meeting room, and it's lined with Hells Angels. And everybody's sizing me up.
Could anybody attend as long as you're an angel?
You had to be an angel.
Okay.
So I've got these guys in there, their backs against the wall, and Old Man John asked me. He said, "Are you ready?" And I barely could say anything. I mean, that's how excited I was. I mean, I was just, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I finally squeaked out a, yeah. And he said, we come first before your father, your mother. And he went right down the line, talked about all the family members. And then at the end, he said, "Do you understand?" And I said to him, "Yes." And he goes, "You don't understand anything yet." Really? And but I was in. He goes, "Okay." And he told one of the guys, he goes, "Throw him the patch." And they threw me the patch, and I caught it, and I opened it up, and extended my arms, and that was the death head, and it was staring at me. And it really looked like it was following me. I was kind of looking at it. I was looking around the room. And then, the old man says, "Well, put it on." And I put it on. And I was watching myself. This may sound corny or romantic to some people, but I was watching myself in kind of an image in the window. It wasn't a mirror, but it was the window. And I could see my reflection. And I felt I made this transition that night as soon as I put that patch on. And I'm sure when you got inducted into the...
and that patch is everything, right?
It's everything.
Hell's Angel,
it's everything. It's his soul, It's now his soul. And, I didn't know any mob guys till I went to prison. And then, I met Rosario, we used to eat with, and these different individuals, and I started seeing a lot of parallels as we'd sit around. And, I don't know if you remember, I worked in the kosher kitchen with Sal. I don't know if
with Rosario, he was in the kitchen.
We were in the kosher kitchen.
That's why we ate a little better. He used to bring stuff back to my cell.
That's right. And he used to go upstairs, and we didn't have it like in Goodfellas where they had the stuff on ice. But he would go upstairs and he would get the different things and make the different sauces.
I was so mad at Rosario because I never drank soda. And he got me hooked on
drinking
Diet
soda.
Coke.
Diet
That
Coke.
is addictive. You know, he used to bring all the guys and say, Sal, why are you starting with me?
Well, I got off track, but
Yeah.
you know, yeah, absolutely. Your whole life is dedicated, you know, to the organization. I got a question for you. Like I get asked all the time, is the Hells Angels a criminal organization? And my response to people when they ask me that is, it's not a criminal organization. It didn't start out as a criminal organization, but there are a lot of opportunities, and it's an organization that now has criminals in it. I don't know if that makes any sense, or
Makes
if
a
it
lot of
sounds
sense.
hypocritical, or you know, when people understand, like you guys didn't wear jackets but everybody knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it opens a lot of doors, and it's like a carte blanche card.
Absolutely. And just to follow that up, you know, the night I took an oath, we didn't take an oath to rob, steal, murder, kill. That wasn't the oath.
It was with each other.
Yeah, no,
No?
that wasn't the oath at all. We take an oath of omerta, which
Right.
means silence.
Correct.
And you're not even supposed to admit that we exist.
Right.
Okay, so when you take that oath, are you saying, okay, I'm becoming a criminal now? No. But do you do criminal activity as a result of being part of that life? Yes. Which brings me to my next question. I was a recruit. The day that my dad proposed me for membership, because I'm sure it's similar with the Hells Angels. You just can't go up to
Well,
an
I
angel and
proposed
say,
my son,
yeah, you say,
Georgie.
You can't go up to somebody and say, I'd like to join. Somebody has to propose you, vouch for you. You have
Yes,
what it takes.
absolutely.
In my case, was my dad. And then when I sat with my boss at the time, he said to me, your dad has proposed you into this life. Is this what you want? I said, yes. He said, here's the deal. From now on, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on call to serve this family. And he ran that down, and he said, but you're going to have to prove yourself. He said, when and if we think you deserve or you're worthy to become a member, we'll let you know. So for the next 2.5 years, I was a recruit. I had to do anything and everything I was told to do to prove myself worthy.
Hang around period in the Hells Angels, then a prospective period, and then even as a new member.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Okay, you may hit me back with this. What did you have to do to prove yourself worthy?
Well, certainly I had to gain everybody's trust, and there were some things that I did that I probably wouldn't do again at this point in my life. So I'll ask you the same thing.
We have the same answer, George. Okay. You know, listen, you know.
We're not fools.
No.
Okay.
You know, but and when you reach that point, they say, okay, you know.
This guy's. And we had a term especially in our little region, Ventura, Los Angeles, then Ventura, was a gentleman named David Ortega. I used to call him David O. He was kind of he was a couple of years older, but you know, I was the boss, but he's the guy I went to. And bounced.
Like your consigliere.
Absolutely. I went and bounced stuff off of him. I said, what do you think about this, David? What do you think of this guy? And, you know, I've got a couple of funny stories about him. If you were okay, he'd call you a regular. The guy's a regular. I go, what do you think of this guy? You know, he goes, he's a regular, you know, and that was the highest endorsement you could get in that outlaw bike culture at that time. And we had another guy that ultimately became a government informant, a gentleman named Tony Tate. Hurt a lot of guys. And the same guy went to David. I didn't like this guy, and he'd been getting high marks from a lot of the guys. I went to David and I said, what do you think? And he goes, I don't like the guy. And we could never put a finger on it, so to speak. And finally David told me, he goes, you know what? I don't like the way he parts his hair. Just an old school guy that, you know, and we talked about your father earlier off camera, I think it was. That's the way David was. He just this old school guy that had their ideals, and he was in a motorcycle club. He was in the Question Marks motorcycle club when I was in high school, you know. So he not only later became a Hells Angel, but I mean, this guy, you know, had a long tenure as a 1% outlaw biker. So yeah, you know, they expect total dedication. You know.
Well, let me say this, you know, again, getting back to the question, did I consider the Cosa Nostra a criminal organization? Well, we don't come in saying, we're a brotherhood.
Right.
We have each other's back. We're a brotherhood. And like my dad would tell me, we didn't like law enforcement at all. My dad told me, he drilled this into my head from the time I was a kid. Mike, you can never be a cop. He said, because a cop takes an oath to lock up their own mother and father if they were to commit a crime. How could you ever be like that? I said, I could never do that, So he put that in my head right away. And so we automatically don't like the police. We automatically didn't mind committing crime. So, okay, we didn't call ourselves a criminal organization, but we were criminals.
Right.
So I think it sounds, again, and I don't know exactly.
No, you're absolutely right. You're not putting words in my mouth. I mean, you're absolutely right, Michael. You know what's also interesting for me? I came from, all my family, both sides came from Greece. Mm-hmm. And when they got here, they made their way, they came, New York, and then they made their way west, wound up in Ventura. But as an Italian, maybe you can relate to this, kind of kept to themselves.
Yes.
They didn't trust the cops. I'll tell you a funny story. In 2001, when I got that indictment, one of the houses they raided when they were trying to put the case together was my mother's. And I can't remember if it was 15,000 or 1,500. We talked earlier about the memories,
Senior moments.
Yeah, so it was cash. It was either 1,500 or 15,000. It was hidden in her mattress. She was still hiding money in her mattress because they didn't trust the banks,
No, I get it. I get it.
And
let me ask you this. Some of the myths that maybe we can talk about, and one of them is this. When I got into the life, the night I took the oath, we went to have dinner afterwards, right? We have a banquet. All the Italians always eat, right? Wine, food, the whole bit. And one of the soldiers came in, which is an official position. That's the bottom ranking of that life after you take the oath. Comes in with a brown paper bag. And he says, hey, boss, should I give all the new guys their bag of money now? The irony being, you think you come into that life and everybody's making you rich when it's the other way around. You got to be paying up.
Right.
So people think that, and I will tell you this, when I went to prison, I didn't get a quarter from anybody. My dad went away, he didn't get a dime from anybody. He had a couple of things going on the street, Shylock money, this. When that ran out, that was it.
Right.
So it isn't that life takes care of you. I want to know if it's the same with the Hells Angels.
Well, we were supposed to get $60 a month.
Really?
$60
Like a
a
stipend?
month, sent to the prisons. And I'll tell you, you're lucky if you could get that some of the months. You call home, where's my damn money?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's similar. It's interesting. You guys, you got inducted. You went out to dinner. I got inducted in the club that night, or voted in, or however you want to describe it. We jumped on our motorcycles and rode San Bernardino to a little old lady's house named Betty. She used to make our patches. And I actually rode out there. Betty sewed my patch, my personal patch, on my jacket. So it was, just...
Is that the normal routine?
Well, if they maybe if I was treated a little bit special because old man John liked me, as you probably, it cuts both ways though. Yes. You get people that get jealous. You got other people that put their arm around you. They go, if old man John likes you, you got to be all right.
Yeah.
So it cuts both ways. But the interesting thing is, went to Betty. She was a religious woman, and you couldn't smoke in there. You couldn't cuss, and when you leave, no hot rodding down the street. That was the 3 rules. And
interesting.
I just thought it was really funny. So I went to Purdue. Betty sewed my patch on my jacket, and it was like a big deal,
I could imagine.
Yeah, it was huge.
Let me ask you, you're of Greek ethnic background.
Yes.
Do you have to be of any ethnic background to be a Hells Angels or anything else?
Well, it's interesting. There was a rumor that the motorcycle club that we've been at odds with for 30-some years, the Mongols, was started because we didn't allow Hispanics into the Hells Angels. Well, David Ortega was my right-hand man You know, he's as Hispanic as you get. So, you know, there's myths and there's ideas, but I will tell you this, and it's the truth. There were blacks in the Hells Angels at one time. There are no blacks in the Hells Angels. And what happened was, along with the women members, they got pushed out. And when Hells Angels started getting attention of law enforcement and going to prison, the Hells Angels took on the prison political color lines. The whites stick with the whites, the Mexicans stick with the Mexicans, the blacks stick with the blacks. And of course we got painted with you know, racist brush. These guys are racist. And, you know, we used to go party at the East Bay Dragons clubhouse. Sonny Barger, who I had a long time relationship with. It was a love-hate type relationship. He was my senior, very powerful guy in the club. He would go hang out at the East Bay Dragons. They were from Oakland. So, you know, were people prejudiced? I didn't get that vibe, but we did have the political prison color lines that we adhered to.
Well, for us, your father had to be Italian.
Right.
That's it. Your father
Now,
wasn't
not
Italian.
your mother, but your father.
Father had to be Italian.
Was it that way always? I was told that initially it was
both?
They both did.
Yes, both, and then they relaxed it to just your father. From what I understand, it might have gone back for security reasons now to mom and dad. I haven't verified that, but that's what I heard. Both have to be Italian.
Right.
But you just said something I don't want to overlook. Women can be involved in the club?
They were at one time.
gosh.
There's a famous, maybe, well, there's two of them that were very famous. It was Garbage Head, who actually had the tattoo, the small death head. That was the first death head, and then, you know, we made a transition to a different style. She had the tattoo, the small death head on her back, and there was another woman called Mother Ruth, and she got that name Mother Ruth because she liked the little younger guys that would come around the club.
Interesting.
But yeah, there were women in the club.
Wow. Well, let me clarify this. No women in Cosa Nostra in America, at least not till today.
Not even when their
know.
husbands go to jail.
No, but in Italy, yes.
That's what I
In Italy,
understood.
yes. Mafia, yes. But here, no. No women. I have to say something else. Okay. You're the boss. I'm a biker now. I'm
Okay.
accepted, standard or whatever. I come to you, hey boss, I got a drug deal. I want to rob the bank, or I want to rob the government out of X amount of dollars. Am I okay to do that?
Well, you know, I would probably immediately think, is this guy recording me?
Okay.
I have a very paranoid personality, and but I would probably say, from a leader and a political and whatever standpoint, if you want to go out and do that stuff, don't involve me, don't involve the club. You know, we have a very strict rule.
That's interesting.
That there was a guy sitting in a meeting next to me. He had a cast on. Well, inside the cast was a bug. And he came to the meeting, and he wanted, it was full of presidents, the meeting room. There's probably 15, 20 presidents in there. And he wanted permission to blow up the outlaws in Kentucky. He specifically, you know, wanted to go after those guys. And we are not allowed to talk about anything like that in a meeting. No criminal activity can be brought
That's
up
interesting.
in the meetings.
No,
And
we differed quite a bit in that regard.
is that right?
Yeah, well, my boss would have said to me, no drugs. We weren't allowed to deal with
Okay,
drugs. You
yeah.
deal with drugs, you die in that life.
Right.
But anything else, if he would have approved, as long as I get a
What
kickback,
can I make out of it?
that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
25% goes up the top.
And I think that, you know, we had a slogan in the club. It was a sarcastic position we took. I don't know what year it was. It was the early 80s, but the organized crime list came out. And of course, Cosa Nostra number one, and the Hells Angels were number two at this particular time. Now, I don't know who made this up, if somebody sitting behind a desk in Washington, but they had said, now these guys are becoming the Mafia on wheels. I don't know if you've ever heard that
Yeah,
before.
well, the thought process was it was a criminal organization, just
Right.
did things differently.
Right.
I always thought that. But now some of the things you're telling me, I don't think so.
No,
Because-
it was an organization established for motorcycling, brotherhood, but when you start getting all this police pressure, and you've got a job. I'll give you a perfect example. I got a guy joins my crew in Ventura. He's a young guy, maybe when I say young, in his late 20s, early 30s. He's got a regular job. He's a truck driver for a company, a distributor. He's distributing stuff, driving around. And the intelligence unit goes to his boss. Did you know so-and-so is doing this? And he's involved with these guys, and we suspect this is going on. He got fired, and that happened a lot to us. And, what does the guy do? He resorts to his wits on the street. He's got to make ends meet. He's got a family. He's got to provide for it. He's got kids and a wife and whatnot. So, is it his fault? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, because he consciously makes a decision. I can't make it here, but I can make it over here because I got some opportunities. I had some brothers over here that said this, and I think that it creates, in a sense, just the machine, the way it is. It eats itself up. It creates somebody that may turn to criminal activity.
Well, let me ask you this, because you said when you were inducted, I'll use that word, they said the Hells Angels comes before anything and anybody.
Absolutely.
Mother, father. So what does that mean? Like, how would it come before your mother or father? Give me an example of that.
Well, I think you gave the perfect example earlier. I'm at the hospital with my mom or dad, and they're dying, and old man John calls me and says, get your ass down here. One time he called me down there. I'll tell you an interesting story. I walked into a room of guys talking, and some people out there may go, "Oh, Jesus, man, he just said they weren't a criminal organization," but yet this is transpiring. I walk into this room, and there's these guys in there, and they're talking about blowing these other guys up, and so I just stopped immediately. I just come out of the military. I worked for the Department of Defense at the time. My tenure with them ended when they found out I was leader of the Los Angeles Hells Angels. And, they threatened to take away my top security clearance and whatnot. But anyways, I
can almost understand that.
Yeah, really. So I walk into this room, and these are guys. This small group of guys are very energetic, down for the cause, and they want to blow these guys up. And then I start questioning them. I go, that's dangerous. If you thought about collateral damage, what they were like, what's collateral damage?
Right.
And I go, the innocent people around when you blow these guys up.
Sure.
So I left. They went ahead, built the bomb, put it at this motorcycle place, and it didn't go off. And because I had complained and I said I wouldn't participate, some of them went to John and said, hey, this guy might not be no good. He wouldn't get involved with us. So what do I have to do? I've got to go recover the bomb. And that's what I did. I went and recovered the bomb that didn't
So
explode.
that you were ordered?
I was ordered by John
right,
to go recover the bomb. I said, why me? I didn't place it there. And he goes,
you want to make sure that
we got to make sure you're okay. There's people that are starting to doubt because you complain, George.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure, and as time passed, and I'm sure they did this to you guys, they create doubt, the cops. Is this guy any good? Is that guy any good?
Yeah, they try to plant stuff, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any tactic that they could use. Let me ask you another thing. You're on the street, you make a score, whatever, armored car robbery, whatever you want to say, you make a score, you make $100,000. Do you have to kick anything up to the boss?
No.
This was your deal.
Your deal is your deal, and what happens is, it's interesting, people they have the misconception, when I did that show on Outlaw Chronicles on the History Channel, I was talking about the guys cooking crank. People thought that it was one big happy family and we had it all structured. The guys that knew how to cook crank did not share that recipe. Wow. They controlled it. They were independent individuals. And I used the phrase you get a kick out of. I said, like Mom's Italian spaghetti recipe. They guarded it. They were like, there's only a handful of us that know how to cook drugs. It gives us an upper hand. It gives an upper hand, not only financially, but I've never said this before publicly, but it gives you an upper hand politically because you can, you know how you can
Sure.
influence people with money.
Absolutely.
And you guys didn't allow drugs, but people selling drugs, there's a lot of money in drugs.
Yeah.
And,
No question.
Fast money.
Well, let me tell you the difference. I'm a recruit, and somebody comes to me with a load of meat, big truck meat, right? So anytime you have something like that on the street, you got to put it on record with your boss, right? I wasn't a made guy yet, I was a recruit. So I go to my boss at the time, I say, I got a load of meat, I'm going to sell it. He says, fine, when you sell it, you come back to me, bring me the money. Okay. So I sell it, I'll never forget, George, it was about $7,200. I come back, I hand him the whole $7,200, right? 2 days later, he calls me in, he gives me $600. I said, $600? So I go see my father, he was in Leavenworth at the time. I said, Dad, I bring in this score, I give him $7,200, they give me $600, I don't even get 10% of the deal, it was my deal.
Right. You came up with it, you executed it?
Yeah, I executed it because anything on the street you have to put on record, no matter what it is.
Is that dangerous?
What's
that seems dangerous to me.
Well, the reason they do that...
Do they actually write it, or is it all in their head?
No, it's in their head,
okay.
But they say we're protecting you because in case anybody makes a claim on it, if it's not on record, you're going to lose it. Okay. Like say somebody else would say, no, that was my
That was mine, I want to sit down.
Yeah, I want to sit down. But if you got it on record, you're protected. But meanwhile, they want to know everything you're doing, of course, so they don't get cut out. So I go see my dad, and he says, okay, from now on, here's the deal. Anything that you bring in, you just bring them 25%. That's it. You don't hand them everything from this point. I said, well, he told me to do that. He said, but from now on, this is how you do it. You tell them after the fact. You don't go beforehand, and then you give them the money. So I learned that early on, and that's what we did from that point. But we had to kick up. Anything that was illegal or on the street, we had to kick up. I mean, there was no question.
I mean, if you went out and made some money and there was a rumor around the club, it was never frowned upon if you threw some money to the charter.
To who?
Through the charter, to the club itself.
Oh, so you could,
to the treasurer.
I'm sure they like that.
Yeah, here's some. I want to donate some money. I had my grandma Lucy died or whatever.
But it wasn't a rule.
No, it was not a rule.
You didn't have to do that. So this is sounding more like a club.
It was a club.
Than a criminal organization.
It's a organization that has criminals in it. It's not a criminal organization.
Yeah.
And people learned real fast that that patch on their back gave them a lot of power. It gave them a lot of power in many aspects of street life. And you also have this unwritten thing going on. What's going on in people's heads, as you probably know. I mean, it's like this guy's a mob guy. He tells me I got to do this. Mm-hmm. I better well do it. It's the same thing in the club. Somebody with a Hell's Angel patch on tells you, "We expect this of you." You got all these images in your head. What's going to happen if I don't listen to these guys? I wanted to ask you something, and maybe you can clarify this for me. What's the actual term mean, on the shelf?
On the shelf is when you did something that was a violation of the rules or policy. You did something and you were stripped of if you were a captain, your captaincy. If you were a soldier, you were stripped. You weren't going to get killed.
Right.
Because in that life you die for certain things.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you're no longer part of the life. So you're on the shelf. You don't get respect. You don't get regarded. That's
Was Joe Bonanno on the shelf?
Yes.
That's why he went.
Joe Bonanno was told straight out, you either leave New York and don't bother us anymore, you're on the shelf, or you're going to die.
Right.
Because of what he did at the time.
Right.
So because he was a boss, out of respect, they let him live.
And he was one of the original.
Oh yeah,
wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the original guys, very powerful.
Right.
But he tried to back end the boss at the time. It was a bad deal. But they let him live out of respect.
Okay.
But he went out to Arizona. That was the end of that. But and I know a few instances where guys were put on the shelf, and
it's I struggled with. I don't know what you went through when you stepped away from that life. I struggled for a couple of years with. I felt like Sonny Barger and I were in this power struggle, and I reached a point in time when I thought maybe it's best for everyone concerned. I'll walk away. I went to the meeting, told the club what I was going to do. I had left, and I was in good standing, is what we call it there. You leave in good standing. And 2 weeks later, I get the phone call. You know, we've revisited your status. You're out bad, no contact. And anybody that talks to me is in jeopardy. I mean, they could get in trouble. They could lose their patch. And, you know, I'm not going to get way off into it, but, you know, you talk about people losing their lives. I mean, we have a history in the 70s. I don't know if, you know a lot of Hell's Angel history, but in the 70s, I mean, there's a string of what the police call in-house killings that they remain unsolved, you know. And,
well, George, if I would have went into the room and said, hey, guys, I'm going to hang it up, I wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Right.
I wouldn't have left the room. That would have been over with.
So did you experience, you got called on the carpet, or you just slowly
No, well,
walked away?
Yeah, it was a plan I had, George. That's the reason I took the plea, because my plan was.
Now, are you not allowed to take a plea?
No, you're allowed.
You can.
I don't know where that rumor came from.
That's a rumor.
So many guys took a
Yeah.
plea. I mean,
Okay,
it's
that's what
ridiculous.
I thought.
Yeah, but people on, again, social media, oh, you're not allowed to take a plea. That means you're a snitch. Thousands of guys take pleas.
Right.
It's just common sense. So that's not true. But I took a plea. When I took a plea, they were congratulating me. Michael, you only got 10 years. I had a $15 million restitution. I had $5 million of forfeitures, and I got 10 years. They were saying, don't even take your shoes off. You know,
Right.
what a deal.
You're not going to get comfortable.
Yeah, it was great. You know,
That's the old timers.
Yeah, because guys were getting 100 years, 50 years. It was crazy what was going on.
Right.
And when I saw this, when they locked me up with no bail, and I saw these guys going to trial, coming back 50 years, 150 years, I said, I'm the youngest out of all of these guys. I beat them 5 times. They're going to give me 300 years.
You can't beat them
insanity.
forever.
No.
You can't beat them
can't.
forever.
And then my partner turned snitch in the gas business. That's how the indictment came down. But
And did he go to them, or did he get in trouble? And
he got in trouble.
Right.
We had a compound in Panama. We had down there. The reason we had that compound, my crazy partner, because there was no extradition between the United States and Panama at that time. So he figured if he ever had to leave the country, he would go there, he couldn't be extradited. Right. I said to him, his name was Larry, I said, Larry, the government wants you, they're going to get you anywhere you are. They don't care about extradition laws. Sure enough, he went down there, he got in trouble on another case, goes down there, what do you think the government does, the FBI? They go in there in the middle of the night and they kidnapped him. And they brought him back to Florida and put him in there. Right. So that was the end of that.
And then did he volunteer it, or did they have an idea what was a little
Funny
above?
story. He was 6'5", 450 pounds.
Wow.
Big guy, right? The FBI told me this afterwards when they locked me up. They said, we brought him in the cell. He saw that cot that was this big. He said, I'll tell you anything you want to know about Michael. Couldn't even sleep on, you know how those cots.
Right,
He couldn't even sleep on. He spilled his guts immediately. But when I left, it was because I just met this young girl. I said, am I going to do to her, you know, what happened with my family? My mother, 33 years without a husband. My sister dies of an overdose of drugs. My other brother, 25 years a drug addict. He ended up cooperating with the government, testified against my father.
So that is true.
Oh, absolutely, 100% true. And he had a serious drug problem. You know, he was screwed up from a young age. George, I can't even tell you how many times I saved this kid's life, that he would have been dead 100 times.
You know what's interesting? It seems to me a lot of the indictments that come out, it's not because they're good investigative work. Someone puts them onto it. I'll tell you a perfect example. When we were in Los Angeles, we were hot and heavy down there. There had been 6 murders within 6 months. All the other guys, we knew that like it was closing in on you. You know, you couldn't go anywhere. They're taking pictures. They're pulling you over. They're trying to get people to talk, leaning on people. And I came up with this idea. There was a club called Saint and Slaves in San Fernando Valley. And I talked to Animal. I talked to some people in Oakland. Talked to the old man John. I said, you know, if these guys became Hell's Angels and we packed up and moved up to Ventura, they would investigate. The investigation would immediately turn to the Hell's Angels that had nothing to do with what transpired.
Right.
So this was like a little plan we had, and they knew it, and they were willing to take that shot. We moved up to Ventura. We were up there like 10 years, and they hadn't figured out what happened. And then one of the guys that was a bomb maker got busted in New York for drugs, and they were saying, "Yeah, you're going down. You're going to do 30." You know how they do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And he goes, "How would you like to solve some murders in Southern California?" And that's how they figured it out.
Of course.
And a guy went to jail. One of my guys went to jail. And one of the things that I'm interested in. My guy, for instance, he blew up 2 guys in downtown LA, killed them both. Got this lawyer. It was a death penalty case. This is when the death penalty was on, then it was off, then it was on, then it was off, back in the 70s.
Right.
And wound up doing 6 years for a double homicide, bombing in downtown LA.
Good.
And he complained.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know if guys like in your former organization, it's almost like they're not grateful. It's like they think somehow they should walk.
Yeah. George.
He got called a dump truck. This lawyer.
Yeah.
I said, how can you say that, man?
Unbelievable. You know what killed us? It was the RICO Act.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, because prior to that act, which I still believe is unconstitutional, I don't want to get into all the reasons why.
Yeah.
Totally unconstitutional. But what really happened there is that prior to that act, you get in trouble. Remember, murder was not a federal crime. You know that.
Right.
They couldn't indict anybody for murder. It was a state crime, and the state's a lot easier to beat than the feds, right? So what happens as a part of the RICO Act, murder becomes one of the acts. Okay,
right.
One of the predicate acts. So now you can get indicted for murder. What happened, very simple. Prior to that act, you got in trouble, you got 10 years, made parole in 4 or 5, you got 15, you're out in 7. Nobody has a problem with that. We expect that. You're going to do it, like we said, you could do it standing on your head. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Now the RICO Act comes in. One count, you can go down for 20 years.
Right.
No more parole. You're doing 85% of your time. So you get 20, you're doing 17 and a half.
And what about the paper behind you?
Plus, if they prove you put $1 into buying your house, one illegal dollar, they take your whole house.
Right.
Everything. So now they kill you financially, they kill you with time, they destroy your family. So what happened was, the Fed's very simple. Hey, you want to talk to us? If not, you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail. We're taking everything you got in your family. You're done. You're finished. But if you want to cooperate with us, you'll be out. This guy's going away forever. Don't worry about it. We'll give you some money. We'll put you in a program. That's it. Right. Guys didn't stand up under that.
Right.
So many guys became informants. And that was it. Look, they don't want to go to jail. And I don't want to get into the, ideology of an informant or anything like that. But people don't stand up under that. And then what happens, you start hearing, well, the life didn't treat me right, and they didn't do this. Hey, we knew when we got in what we were getting involved in.
Yeah.
It's,
Absolutely.
And the things go wrong, of course they do. We're street guys. Is there backstabbing at times? Of course.
Yeah.
But that's part of the life. You sign it up for that.
Yeah. It's a lot of jealousy.
Yeah, a lot of jealousy.
Yeah, the jealousy was just
a lot
amazing.
of treachery in life.
Right.
But I don't want to knock it all, because there was a lot of good guys that I really liked in that life, and that brotherhood, many of us took it seriously.
Right.
I
saw something. I'm going to tell you a little story here. And like in Ventura, we ran that town like with an iron fist. I mean, it was our town. The cops knew it. The mayor knew it. The city fathers knew it. But we were fair to the public. We didn't prey on anybody. Stop some gang violence, drive-by shootings and whatnot. We made it a rule: you can't do this, you can't do that. And how strong were the families in New York? Because I have a story that's really interesting. They seemed that anybody that was a made guy in New York had a lot of sway. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you a little story. I had my Hell's Angel stuff on. I went to a restaurant one night on Mulberry Street. I was supposed to meet, I'm not going to say who he is. He's supposed to be a capo. I met him through legal, got him a lawyer and blah, blah, blah. Became friends with him. And, he'd visit me in Ventura. I'd visit him in New York. And I walked into this restaurant one night, and I said to the maitre d', I go, came here, we're going to eat tonight. And the maitre d' looked at me, I had my Hell's Angel stuff on, and He was so rude to me.
Really?
I mean, I couldn't believe how rude he was. And then walks in this gentleman who I, reputed captain in one of the families. And he comes up and he kissed me on the cheek.
Everything changed.
Oh my God. And I'll tell you what happened at the end of the night. I mean, they put us right in the front and they brought a table out, just like in Goodfellas, and they set the table up and we sat down and we ate. And when we left, the maitre d' came up to me and said, "Thank you for not complaining to Johnny," because Johnny said his name. Yeah. But anyways, he said, "How are they treating you in here?" And I looked at the maitre d' and I go, "They're treating us good." And but he came and thanked me at the end of the night. He was just so worried that I was going to spill the beans on him, and I just thought it was very interesting.
Oh, yeah. We got treated well, and in turn, you treated the people well. It
wasn't
that,
absolutely. So it was a two-way street.
It was a two-way street. Yeah. But I got to ask you this: I had two incidents, I would say, with a biker group.
Right.
One, senior moment. I don't remember if they were based in Long Island. I had a nightclub out there, big club, and I don't remember.
Was it the Hells Angels?
I don't think so. I think it was either the Mongols or the Outlaws, if possible. I could be wrong, George. I don't remember. Anyway, they got a little out of hand. I wasn't there, and our bouncers got in with them, and they shot up our cigarette machines on the outside. Just shot them all up, right? So I was pretty upset about it.
I bet you were.
And we straightened it out and got in touch with one of the group, and the two guys that shot it up they paid for it. They got in severe trouble. And after that, everything was calm. I said, "You guys are invited back into place, but I don't want to say anything like that again." It was all great, right? It worked out. That was one incident. They were very respectful. Unlike in Goodfellas when they got a little crazy.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Yeah, that was that was Bronxdale.
I mean Bronxdale. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bronxdale. Thank you for correcting me.
And those were Hells Angels.
They were.
They played that part in there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love Chaz. He's a good friend.
Sure.
So. Yeah. But I love that line. "Now you can't leave." That was great.
Yeah. That was a great line.
That was a great line. But the second time is, and you know this fella, I was in MDC, the federal jail, with Chuck Zito.
Sure, I know Chuck.
And that was back in '85.
Yeah.
85,
he had been
86.
in Japan, and they extradited
in Japan.
him.
Yeah, I don't remember if he was my cellmate or not. I think he was, because I kind of have a vision of him laying on the bunk and he and I talking about the whole Japan thing. I think he was facing 4 years at the time. And I got along good with Chuck back then. I haven't seen him since then. He kind of, in keeping with his image, I think, he's kind of snubbed me a little bit, I think. Chuck, if you're listening, I don't want to accuse you of that 100%, but that's what I feel. I don't know.
Well, you may be going through a little bit of, Sonny Barger basically told the club, "You talk to George Christie, you're out. You're either with me or you're with him." So it created some problems with some actors that I was friends with, had a relationship with. But you know what, Michael, I let it roll off my back.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Honestly, I haven't had any of that from anybody, and I don't know why. I've just been very fortunate in that regard. But that was the only thing with Chuck, and I liked him. We got along great in there. He was good. I seen him once after that, but we didn't really talk. I couldn't get to him. He couldn't get to me. I don't remember, but. It's just interesting.
And I feel the same way. I still have all the respect I ever had for Chuck. I got no axe to grind with him. I hope he doesn't with me.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I chose to walk away, and I'll take whatever comes along with it. Did you guys? You mentioned, like the community. I think I got the impression that the community was ready to help you guys or tell you anything that was going on, cops
absolutely.
Around?
Look, we had no crime in our neighborhoods. We took care of the people. I use John Gotti because he's the most, colorful guy around. People in the neighborhood loved him.
Right.
People in the neighborhood loved me and my father. No crime. We took care of people. You needed something, you came to us. If we could help you, we could. Because we took good care of our people. And they, in turn, loved us as a result.
I mentioned a couple of times the 59-count 2001, 2002 state racketeering case. And in that case, some of the things they cited were we used to get to walk to the front of the line and not pay a cover. we used to get
wrong
free
with that?
hors d'oeuvres in
Yeah.
a restaurant, and they were just grasping at stars. But one of the things that was interesting, we used to go to this restaurant all the time. The guy's dead now, so I can. He had a heart attack and died. But this guy Chang, he was a little guy from Thailand. He had Thai food, and that was the only Thai restaurant in Ventura. And we would all go there on Friday night after church, and sometimes there'd be 15 of us in there, 10 of us, 12 of us eating. We'd sit in the back table, he'd save it for us. And Chang made me laugh. He walked back there one night and he handed me a note, and it said, "There's now wire transmissions all around the area here. Watch what you say."
Really?
And I, of course, I passed it to one guy, and we passed it around the table, and everybody, observed what was going on. And it didn't stop us from going there. And I certainly saw Chang as a great friend for telling us. But it kind of ruined the atmosphere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we continued to go there. We didn't stop.
Yeah.
We were very close to the community in Ventura.
Let me ask you, you miss riding your bike?
I do, and
That was it, right?
everything. And I'm going to tell you something. When I went to Spain, had this production company, option the rights to one of my books. It was a fiction novel, and so I sold everything. Went to Spain. My marriage unraveled. COVID shot the movie down, like it did a lot of things.
Everything, yeah.
Which I don't. To me, as COVID was the flu. But anyways, I was going to wait and announce it later, but I'll tell you, I've got a bike I'm putting together.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I got a bike I'm putting together, and once I get it done, I'll send you a picture.
Well, I want more than a picture. I want to ride.
You want to ride?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, this bike is going to be equipped with a sidecar. And it's going to be very custom and very cool. And I'm going to come down here, and you and I are going to go for a ride.
That's a deal we shake
It's
on.
a deal.
That. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And what else you got going now, George?
Well, I've got my podcast, Speak of the Devil. It's trucking away on it. As you know, it's hard building a base, and it's slowly coming together. I got a good following on my social media. I'm trying to drive traffic over to Patreon. I have another book I'm working on. It's called Crossing the Rubicon, and it's really personal interactions with club members and decisions I made and what prompted me as a leader to do certain things I did. Working on it daily. I'm just thankful the way everything turned out. I've really happy with my life.
Well, that's good, Joe. We share the same feeling. I mean, I feel, fortunate and blessed to be alive and free. I say this all the time, and I think you may relate to this and may feel the same way. If you're a made guy in Cosa Nostra in this country, and you die of old age and you die free, you've really accomplished something.
Right.
It's a treacherous life to navigate. And
the same thing in the Hells Angels.
And I think the same thing.
I can't tell you how many funerals I went to, unsolved murders, and that's wasn't the way things were set up initially, but things change.
Things change, and so I think we're both in the same category of being very fortunate, very blessed.
We are very fortunate. We are very blessed.
Okay. Anything else you want to?
No, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you. It's been a long time since Terminal Island.
Wow.
And we've both been on this big journey.
Let's go back in time for a minute. Do you remember the South Yard at all? Did you get to the South Yard?
No,
you
never made it there. That's before they had the housing downtown. So you would go to the North Yard. You get a billet, and you would drive to court. It was a treacherous, long journey. It was 3:00 in the morning. They'd wake you up. You'd get dressed, and you get searched, and you get on the bus, and you go out to the courthouse.
Oh, so you weren't convicted yet?
No, but they had you living on. That's where we lived.
Yes, in
Remember?
North Yard. Remember, and they would
North
take
Yard.
you out to do your court stuff.
Right.
No, I had already been convicted, and so
Yeah,
I was
you were
able-
living on the.
I was living in the South Yard.
That's
with
where a
Rosario.
guy, my friend and close club brother, Guy Castellone, lived on the.
Guy lived there.
Guy.
You remember Pete Milano?
I
He was
do
kind of the
remember
boss.
Pete,
He was a
yeah,
good guy there,
yeah.
and Sam Sciorentino and all those
Sure,
guys.
Sam. And I got to tell you a great story about Sam. When all that stuff was going on between us and the Hells Angels and the Mongols, you know, one of the Mongols' funerals got bombed, and Sam called the clubhouse.
Did he?
Yeah, and all he said was, "Really? At a funeral?" And I hung up.
That was it.
But when I got to the Terminal Island, he was there,
Yeah.
and I think him and Carlos Marcelo.
Yeah,
They
they were very close.
Yeah, they
You're
had
right.
got caught in a
Yes.
scam to bribe a judge or
That's
something.
correct.
And Sam was doing his time, and Sam talked to me. He gave me a lecture
Yeah.
about, come on, man, you got to have some parameters here.
Yeah.
You know, at a funeral, it was like getting scolded by your dad.
Yeah.
You know, I was like
He
in
was
my
an
30s at the time.
yeah, and he was an old timer to me
Yeah,
too at
yeah.
that time. But he was married to Keely Smith, if you remember, Louis Prima
I do.
Keely Smith.
Is that right?
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Yeah, he was married. To
Now, another thing I was told, I don't remember his name, but there was the guy there that he was the first black book entry in Las Vegas. He wasn't allowed to go into the casinos. Do you remember him?
Oh,
He
wait a
had thrown acid in somebody's face. And, it's like we talk about the mentality of, you can talk about the mentality of like outlaw bikers and about mob guys. And I remember him telling me,
I
you
do
know who I mean?
Yeah, I do, but I can't think of his name.
Yeah, he told me, he goes, I didn't mean to blind them.
Yes, yeah.
I just
was,
meant to disfigure.
Exactly. He was one of only two guys that I know that were in the Black Book. Another guy is still alive. He's a friend of mine. He's in Vegas still.
Right.
Black Book. Every time I meet him, we got to meet outside of the casino.
Yeah, you can't go in there.
And this guy, but yeah, I can't remember his name. But it's 40
There's a
years
lot of
ago, so we
interesting
can pass.
guys
yeah.
in Terminal Island.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you something. If you got to do time in the federal system, that's the place. The
Yeah, it's a
South
great
Yard
place.
of TI,
Yeah.
the best place.
And the gym they had at the time.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
When I got picked up in the middle of the night and they moved me out of there, I was like, you can't
Don't
do
do
this.
it to me.
I was so mad. And
You
then
know-
I never made it back there.
I grew up in a kosher delicatessen. My family was in the restaurant business. And so I knew the kosher cooking rules. And Guy and those guys had tried to keep me out of the kitchen for months. You know how you had to rotate into
Yeah,
the kitchen?
yeah.
And I was walking through there, and the guys in the kosher kitchen were like, what do we do? And I said to the guys, I go, what's wrong? And they go, they pulled a cook out last night. They pull you
Yeah.
out in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah.
And they go, we don't know what to do. And I said, I know the kosher cooking rules. You want me to help? And they go, yeah. And they went and told one of the sergeants, this guy's going to help us. So I get called upstairs, and he's like the warden of the food area. I don't know what his title is. Mm-hmm. And he's looking at me and looking at me. He says, so you really know how to cook kosher, and you know the kosher rules? And I said, yeah. And he said to me, I know who you are. He goes, you're head of the Hells Angels, aren't you? And I said, well, And he goes, look, if you can run those maniac outlaws, he goes, I'm sure you can control 25 Jews for me. Because I guess they had a lot of trouble with, they would demand certain things.
Yes,
and
I remember.
Do you remember?
It was the Jews and it was the Muslims.
The Muslims?
Yeah, they wanted.
Yeah,
and they
special
got it.
fare.
Yeah,
Yeah.
special fare, which is a religious thing.
Exactly.
And they got it, but we used to get Rosario used to bring
Yeah.
a lot of stuff out of the
Yeah.
kitchen, and we did okay. Wasn't good, fellas, because
right.
people ask me, was it really like that? No, wasn't like that. But if we had friends in the kitchen,
Right.
we ate a
They
little
would
bit
bring
better.
stuff, and I know that Rosario would go upstairs sometimes.
Yeah.
And he would bring down canned clams. Mm-hmm. So he'd make a clam sauce, but with canned clams, not fresh stuff.
But you know what? And I tell my wife, the canned clams are better because they come in a juice. It's a better
Got
sauce.
the juice in it. He would put the juice in the sauce.
Yes, and plus
Yeah.
you got the clams that spread all over the place. I liked it better. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway.
George, this has been great, and I think next time we get together, we have more prison stories. My viewers love to hear that.
Well, let's
so we can
do
get
it.
together
I'm
and
telling
talk
you,
about it.
I got a million things I'd still continue to ask you. We'll do it again.
We'll do it again. George is the real deal, and listen, what you hear from him is the absolute gospel truth, so I advise you to listen in Patreon.
Patreon, Speak of the Devil.
Speak of the Devil. He's got a couple of books out, too.
Yeah, I got 3 books out. I got another book coming. There's a show coming out. I'm not allowed to say the station, but it's going to be 6 to 8 episodes this summer.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. And you got a great thing on History Channel that was
Outlaw Chronicles is still a great show to watch.
That's it, my friend.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much again. Okay. Well, there you have it. I enjoyed speaking with George very much. Hope you enjoyed that also. You know, the Hells Angels, they're a very real group. It was very interesting to me to find out that they're not considered a criminal organization, whereas Cosa Nostra obviously is, even though when we take our oath, we don't take an oath to lie, steal, kill, murder. That's not what we do. It's an oath of silence. That's what Omerta is. But it's considered a criminal organization, and really so are the Hells Angels. But from within, they don't look at themselves that way. Very interesting, I thought. But I hope you enjoyed the conversation. George is a great guy. And after you see it here, we're going to make it available on his Patreon platform also. So that's it for today, my friends. How do I leave you? Same way. Never going to change. Be safe. Be healthy. God bless each and every one of you. And yes, I'll see you next time. Take care.